going to be Maryland's team total. I'm going to look at it over 86.5 points. And then I'm going to look at their two players who I think are going to have the most success for both their points and their rebounds. Firstly, Julian Reese here. His number coming in at 26.5 points and rebounds. I will take that to the over coming in at minus 106. He has the ability to really fight it out for those rebounds and have those second chances out there. And I do think with how strong he has been at getting those points and getting those rebounds, he nicely will go over this without Freeman in the lineup, but as well as a Derek Queen. Derek Queen here, his number a little higher at 27.5, but again, I think it's a big day for Maryland. I think both of them can go over those points and rebound numbers nicely. And when you parlay all three legs together, it's coming in at plus 509, Scott.
All right, that's not too bad. I do like Maryland in the game. I always got you mentioned so many injuries there. Series is 4-1 over Maryland at home. Overall 15-9-1 over. I'll throw you that. They've won 5 straight at home. They're tough to beat there in Maryland. So I like the terms. It's a big number, late 11. That's why I understand probably why you went with more with the player props, which I wish here in New York. I don't know whether they're going to switch that. I'm guessing eventually. But they don't offer college player props, as we mentioned all the time here in New York. They do in Jersey. They do in most other states. But here in New York, for whatever reason, they just decided, yeah, I mean, what are they telling about the New York public, right? That they don't trust us? Really? You don't trust New Yorkers?
Right? Not trust the New Yorkers out there. What the heck is with that? That's exactly what they're saying. They'll give New Jersey the ability to take those player props. They can't just cross on over and tell those players not to do something. I don't know, Scott. It's really interesting that they don't trust you guys enough. Maybe it's just you. Maybe you're the whole reason New Yorkers can't have player props.
Yeah, maybe it's my computer. Maybe it's just me. I could see maybe not doing the New York schools, right? That's too close to home. But to not have player props from games in Arizona or in this case Maryland, I mean, really, listen. If you want to do something, you're going to do it. It's as simple as that. You look up and down these rosters, right? And most of the kids are from all over the place anyway. It's not like Maryland only has Maryland kids and Iowa only has Iowa kids. There are New York kids all over the place. I mean, maybe that's the answer then. Maybe, you should just, that's it. What you're right, Scott. There are kids all over the place. That's why we're not living in just New York schools, you dope. So, by the way, do you have, I know the answer to this, but I'm still fascinated by it. I really am. Do you have Rutgers versus Oregon tonight on your screen, 7 o'clock game?
No, I absolutely don't. It's so weird.
3,000 miles away, and you don't have Rutgers versus Oregon, and you don't have any of the New Jersey schools. You didn't have Seton Hall yesterday. That's bizarre, right? I mean,
it's so bizarre. It makes no sense, right? Like, why? What's the reasoning behind that? It's just, it's a hard one to swallow. And I was looking at a couple other books, Scott. They're not giving me anything for Rutgers either. So Calgary and Rutgers just don't go to 2-2. Yeah.
That is you should call, honestly, you should call up tomorrow when you get a second and just say, how come I don't get New Jersey schools? I'm in Canada. It can't be obviously a United States thing, right? You're getting all these other schools. It's amazing. I can see if it's Toronto and Buffalo, you wouldn't get New York schools, but Calgary and New Jersey, great. All right, we're gonna get it right.
So my team didn't win this weekend, but I still did with this app that's taking over the game. Sports Millions Pick'em lets you make quick and easy predictions. Pick your favorite players, go higher or lower, and you can still win big even if your team loses. Plus, the multiplier is insane. With just a few picks, you can win big money. So get on it. They've got a welcome bonus to help you start off your winning streak.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back. It is In-Game Live Game Day here on the grid on a Sunday afternoon, a slow Sunday. Boy, I tell you what, we're so used to football, right? Whether it's a Super Bowl or conference championship games or regular season games, we went from, everything to basically nothing. No NBA except for the All-Star game, no hockey, not even the Nations 4, a little bit of college basketball. So Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors.com has been gracious enough to join us as he does all the time here on the grid. Appreciate a couple moments. Jeff, how are you this afternoon, bud?
You mean we're not headlining the NBA All-Star Weekend here? I mean, come on.
Figure it out. Joe and I spent an hour yesterday trying to figure out who's on who's playing who, the format. I mean, I got an over-under 75.5 in an NBA game. I'm all set to put the mortgage on that, but I don't even know how many minutes they're going to be playing, to tell you the truth.
No, life without football, the college, March Madness here. Great NHL All-Star game. 4 nations last night, of course, but enough to talk about here. We got some action here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we absolutely do. So there's a bunch of games going on right now. Did you have anything between Creighton and St. John's? This one really piquing my interest here. We've just started that second half. It was a 39-40 going into the second half. We now have St. John's up 42-40 and a spread of 4.5, total 158.5. Would you jump into this if you didn't have a player? Did you have something going into it?
I thought the pre-flop number was great. It opened at 5. It did go to 6. The under-over from 140 to 143.5. We took the over 143.5 pre-flop to start the game. Thought it was going to be a real tight game here. Both teams coming off losses. I did give a slight lean. St. John's to win, Creighton to cover, trying to, thread that needle here. But I thought the easiest way to get into this game was to get over that 143 or 143.5.
You know what I'm finding, Jeff? I'm finding like home court advantage when you're an underdog means a whole lot more than home court advantage does as a favorite. We've seen these last couple of weeks, especially in the SEC, where the road team, Auburn yesterday, we had seen Tennessee last week get a nice road win. I'm just noticing that more and more. This afternoon, just before Joe and I came on, Bradley wins at Drake. Great Missouri Valley game. So I mentioned that because we got another one in the Mountain West that's just tipped off. Utah State at New Mexico. Line was 4.5, 5.5. It's basically the same right now. Utah State, 5 minutes in, leading 12-11. Any thoughts on that game? And any thoughts on maybe home court advantage no longer being – I think it inspires the lesser team, but it seems to be like the better team, maybe it just has more pressure on them being at home for some reason.
This Utah State-New Mexico game, February 1st, New Mexico went into Utah State and beat them by 18. So initially you would look at this game and say a great revenge spot for Utah State going to the pit against New Mexico. What surprised me, the overnight number was 6. I figured the only way that this number could go is down, and it did go down to 4.5 here. Utah State, obviously a live dog here, good revenge spot here. But I usually trust and respect the opening numbers. This reminds me of Kansas State and BYU last night, where, again, that number opened up at such a large number. The only way the number could go, they got the Kansas State money, and BYU goes out and wins by 15 here. So I don't discredit anyone jumping on Utah State here, but I think the true value here is New Mexico at home, -4 or 4.5 here. But I definitely can, not trying to talk both sides of the fences here, but Utah State is a live dog.
Okay. I like where you're going there. That one has a total of 164.5. So that total is just ticking up from that original closing number, right around that 157.5, you guys. What about Iowa and Maryland? Now, these two teams are kicking off at 5 p.m. Eastern here. High total in this one, 162.5. We've got a spread of 10.5 with Maryland being that double-digit favorite at home. Do you think they can cover that many points? I know it's moved down from maybe like 11.5 to a 10.5, but still, it's a lot of points out here.
Joe, I got a good story about Maryland on Friday Night Lights and Sundays. When I wager on Maryland, they become the twerps. When I bet against Maryland, they're the Terps.
Everybody has a team like that.
Yeah,
so what are you doing? So we can all bet the opposite.
Exactly.
Exactly. This Iowa team has not been good this year. They give up a lot of points here as well. As you said, it opened at 12.5. It closed at 11 at the Circa. A 157 to a 163, some 162s and a halves. I'll go out on a limb here and say Maryland are the Terps today, and I do like their team total over. I think there'll be a lot of points scored here. I think this game gets close to the 170s versus the 160s.
All right. I'll ask the next one because Joe doesn't have this one for whatever reason in Calgary, like we were discussing beforehand. But Rutgers at Oregon. Ducks laying 7.5. Very disappointing Rutgers team. You know, they got the two heralded freshmen coming in. I bought in. I had a ticket on them, Jeff, to win the national championship, thinking I could head somewhere along the line, even if they don't get to the Final Four. But at this rate, you know, it's going to take a minor miracle. It's going to take a Big Ten run. They're 12-13. They've lost, 2, 4, 5 of their last 7. Again, only 7.5, though.
No, and you're spot on there. You look at the Oregon sheet here on Ken Palm, 17-8, but they've lost 3, 5. They've lost 5 of the last 6. And that includes Michigan State and Michigan. They did just beat Northwestern. I think your eyes are spot on here, though, on only a 7 here. Here's a Rutgers team, back-to-back losses against Maryland and Iowa. They did beat Illinois here. They don't play particularly well on the road. They did upset Northwestern here. I do like the points here, Scott. Don't throw that ticket out yet, okay? Let's go with Scarlet Knight here. I think you can get some 7.5s at some shops. So sprinkle a little beer and pizza money on the money line itself. Let's go Rutgers in the upset here.
Wow, winning outright at Oregon. How about that? All right, we'll take a quick little break. We'll come back. We got the Louisville, Notre Dame, maybe Valpo, Evansville, pretty decent Missouri Valley game, and then we'll get just thoughts on the 4 Nations tournament last night.
slow play drumbeat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scavern, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who knows how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams, who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
20-34. They have 14 games below 500. Any given night, you have no idea who is going to play for Philadelphia. Embiid has missed so many more games than he has actually played this year.
I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens because for the last 4 years now, do it every year, and I want to hit myself in the head with a bat.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Live. Game Day here on the grid. Scott and Joe talking with Jeff Dawson. EastCoastSportsInvestors.com is his website to get all his picks, all his plays. EastCoastSportsInvestors.com. Jeff, we had a pretty good Missouri Valley matchup. Just finished up, as I mentioned. Bradley goes to Drake, Iowa, and beats the Bulldogs by 1. So they're now 1 game back. Got another halfway decent one, Northern Iowa, which is in 3rd place in the Valley, hosting Murray State, which is only 13-13. I mean, I get it. I've seen enough games where I'm not that surprised that Murray State at 13-13 is actually a home 1.5-point favorite over Northern Iowa, which is 17-9 overall, 11-4 in conference play. Both pretty good under teams. Northern Iowa 16-9 under. Murray State 13-11-1 under, including 4-1 last 5 at home. Any thoughts on that matchup?
I think you nailed it. I mean, just looking, from X's and O's, you got a Murray State team, as you said, 13-13, have won their last 2 against Valpo and Illinois, Chicago. And Northern Iowa, 17-9, winners of 4 in a row, and 6 of their last 7. That only loss was to Drake, an overnight number of a pick'em, now 1.5. So I do lean the home team here. If you are playing the home team here, Murray State, I strongly suggest playing the money line. Don't play the -1 or 1.5 and, potentially get hooked here. So I do lean the home team, 13-13. Not that, maybe to get above 500 and get a little run going before conference time there. So I do like the home team.
Yeah, short price on Murray State. They're coming in at -118 on the money line. So absolutely makes sense. I love those lower money line prices. What about the 8 p.m. Eastern matchup between Louisville and Notre Dame? Louisville's defense has been playing really strong here. Do you think Notre Dame has what it takes?
Another team that just is not playing well at all. Louisville, great season here. You look at their record right now, 19-6. They had won, 12 of their last 13. Their only loss was away at Georgia Tech. So maybe that opens up a little eyes here. An overnight number here that was 6.5, now steamed to 7.5, over under from 145 to 146.5. Notre Dame's offense, not the greatest. Louisville's defense has been playing well all season long. I don't find a lot of people backing Notre Dame at home here today. The number a little sketchy to me. If you like Notre Dame today, I strongly suggest that you take a look at them in the first half. You might be able to catch a solid 4 on them. You'll know early if they're going to be in this game here. So if I was to get involved in this game on Notre Dame, I would be looking at them in the first half at +4.
Mm-hmm. Got the NBA All-Star game tonight, Jeff. Listen, you need to be a brain surgeon to figure this all out. 4 teams. I'm assuming there's going to be 2 semifinal games and the 1 championship game. Team Shaq, Team Candace, Team Chuck, Team Kenny. Thank you very much, TNT. Are you getting involved in this at all, or should we just go to the Nations 4?
I back in the day, I used to enjoy this. I mean, way back. But when it got silly, I've kind of stayed away. It used to be the regular All-Star game, roll the ball out under over of 350 or something stupid like that, and at halftime, each team had 100 and something points. So I stayed away. And when you talked about the 4 Nations tournament, can you imagine Adam Silver, who's trying to do everything possible to bring the ratings back up to the NBA here? It's been a dismal all season long. And then to look up in his All-Star weekend and Saturday night, you got the 4 Nations tournament, USA and Canada. The first 9 seconds, 3 fights. I mean, I didn't know if I was watching WWE or Slapshot the movie. I thought after the 3rd fight that it was a replay. I couldn't believe 3 fights in 9 seconds. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I'm glad you feel the same way. So who do you think will get a win tomorrow and go on to face Team USA? Because we know the USA has 6 points. They've made it into the finals. All the other 3 teams sitting there with 2 points, Jeff. So who can get it done?
I really got to think Canada is salty right now, and they're slicking their chops here, knowing the U.S. has nothing to play for. So Canada's got to grab the bull by the horns here. Big game early and often. Bennington can't give up any soft goals. Big game from Canada and the rematch on Thursday night.
Yeah. Hard to imagine Jordan Binghamton is the Canadians' best goaltender. So they're laying 4-10.
Rub it in, Scott.
Yeah, I know. Jeff, great job as always. Check out his website, EastCoastSportsInvestors.com. Great job.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and 4th down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. In-game live, game day here on the grid. Again, thanks to Jeff Dawson joining us for a couple segments there. EastCoastSportsInvestors.com is his website to get all his picks, all his plays, EastCoastSportsInvestors.com. It's funny, Joe, same thing happened last night that happened the other night. In that, we finish up our show right at 8 o'clock. So I go into the kitchen and get the little dinner prepared, and I come back and I hear everyone's yelling and screaming on the TV set. Oh, they're all excited. I'm like, what the fuck? What did I miss? What happened? And lo and behold, we have the 3 fights there in the first 10 seconds. And it happened the other day because I'd finished up on In-Game Live Friday night, and Team USA was leading 2-1. Excuse me. So same thing, went into the kitchen, got a little bite to eat, and came back, 10 minutes later, and I see 3 goals on the board. I'm like, what the fudge? What did I miss here in 5 minutes of play? So back-to-back games in which I watch this stuff, I miss all the excitement. I saw the highlights of it later on, but it's not the same when it's coming up versus just watching, and you're not anticipating, 3 goals in 3 minutes or 3 fights in 13 seconds or 9 seconds, whatever it was last night.
Yeah, so the lesson I'm learning here, Scott, from your story is we need to get you a TV in your kitchen. Like, how is there not one that you can see when you're making some food? Because last night I was super excited. I made a homemade cauliflower cheddar soup, and I was cutting up all the vegetables in my kitchen watching that game. So cauliflower kind of went everywhere when that third fight broke out. I couldn't believe what I was seeing out there on the ice. But yeah, 3 fights in 9 seconds. You need a TV in your kitchen. Absolutely. You can't miss a second of the action out there.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I made some homemade chili last night, so I'm a big chili guy. So, but it is true, and it's amazing. Sometimes you just miss the action. 5 minutes, no big deal. What's going to happen in 5 minutes? And 2 of the most exciting things. I will say though, after that, like I watched the second period, when we got and the rest of the first for that matter, and we got the 2 goals in the first. Okay, looking halfway decent. The 1 goal was a soft goal, but then the play just kind of. It almost like that was the euphoria. We had the excitement, and then really the rest of the game wasn't, to me, that exciting, to tell you the truth. USA, that was New Jersey Devils, hockey, Lou Lamoriello. I mean, that was it. Grabbed a 2-1 lead, and that was the end of the offense for Team USA. I don't know how many shots on goal they ended up having, but man, they weren't even trying, and they couldn't break that defense, and 2-1 was 3-1 was the final with the empty netter.
Yeah, they weren't giving Canada any space out there on the ice at all. As soon as they got that lead, they were absolutely defending it with their lives out there. So I thought it was a fantastic game, and it was a fantastic game for betting, Scott. I had both teams to score in the first period and the under 1.5 in the second, and then Connor McDavid for a goal. So
yeah,
it was beautiful.
I don't want to cut you off because you said it. I mean, you had it dead to rights, Joe, yesterday. You said you thought you'd get 2 goals in the first, and the thing would end like 2-1, 3-1. I mean, you were right on.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's like one of those times where it felt like I was looking into a glass bowl, a glass bowl. That's what it's called. No, a glass. What is that thing called, Scott? Yeah, bowl.
Yeah. The thing.
Ball. Ball, not bowl. Glass ball. Right?
Ball, okay.
If I can talk. That's what it felt like I was looking into with that game. It just played out exactly how I wanted, except I thought the scores would be reversed. I thought Canada would be able to pull off the win. And now the chirping from the Americans out there, Scott, saying it's their game, not Canada's, hurt a little. That's what all our commercials were saying, though. It's Canada's game, right? So hopefully they meet in the finals here on Thursday.
Now, is there anything, I was trying to figure this out last night, is there anything USA can do that would force them to eliminate Canada? Like if they lost to Sweden in regulation, Sweden would have 5 points. I'm trying to remember who played who to get their 2. Who did Canada beat the first?
Beat Sweden. Yeah, Canada beat Sweden in overtime. So if both of them win in regulation, both of them win in regulation, Canada wins the head-to-head battle, and we'll move on. But if Sweden beats Team USA in regulation and Finland pushes Canada to overtime, they'd only pick up 2 points and then Sweden would win because they'd get 3 points in regulation. It's going to be a tough one.
I know they won't, but they really should flip it, right? They really should have the Sweden-USA match first, just because that's the least important versus Canada-Finland. Because you said it, if Canada needs overtime, we'll say, to beat Finland, then USA, would they lay down, and let Sweden win? You think?
Then they're going to have to face Sweden again, though, right? That's going to be the problem, unless Finland beats Canada and then Finland beats Sweden. So Canada and Finland both hold those head-to-heads, right? So depending on what happens in that first game will determine if Sweden, if they go to overtime, they'll be out of it no matter what happens there. So that could be a live betting opportunity then at that point, depending on who you think has the more motivation. If Sweden just wants to win for their pride, or if Team USA just will relax in that overtime situation, if that's the case, because they don't need the win, right? It's going to be really interesting to see the mindsets of these teams coming out. But yeah, both Canada and Finland will hold that tiebreaker if they win in regulation and Sweden wins because Team USA decides to rest their players, which they could. They could come out and play a very lax game out there, Scott. I would think it would be a higher scoring game. Sweden, we saw what they're able to do versus Team Canada. I really like their style of play out there on the ice. I think their ability to move that puck up and down the ice has been great. I know Finland was able to get the win, but they played great hockey. So it's all going to come down to tomorrow, and it's going to be really exciting to see who moves on. I really do think it's got to be Team Canada. It's going to be scrappy again to start on Thursday if it is Team Canada. Be interesting to see who the villains decide to be, because with Matthew and Brady even saying there was group text that they were going to be those villains going into that game. So we'll see. Maybe Canada brings that villainous in that Thursday matchup if they're the ones who bring it through.
That's right. So Sweden lost in overtime to Canada and Finland. So what you're saying is if the winner of Canada-Finland wins in regulation Monday afternoon, then the Sweden-USA match is completely worthless. So we bet the over because they're just going to be – this is going to be an all-star game, so let's have fun. Do we bet the under because they're not going to be trying anymore? Do we bet Sweden because Sweden – they may be eliminated, but that's it. I mean, they would have more to prove than USA, which knows they're playing in the final. So what do they care? Whereas Sweden's got to be saying, we don't want to go 0-3. So that's interesting. You got to think about, the mindset of the players. But yeah, so if Canada or Finland wins tomorrow afternoon in regulation, they both would hold the head-to-head tiebreaker over Sweden because they both beat Sweden. So that would deem that game meaningless. Well, you talk about tickets being worthless. I don't know what tickets are going for now for that matchup, but
you still want to go though, Scott? Could you imagine seeing all of those superstars under one roof? Like you look at Team USA, look how stacked that team is, and then Team Sweden has some fantastic players as well. So I don't think it would be anywhere where they could drop the price, because you look at Team Sweden, you've got Jasper Bratt of the Devils, Leo Carlson of the Ducks. You've got Harrison Elk of the Minnesota Wild, Forsberg of the Predators, William Karlsson of Vegas, Kempe. You've also got Lindholm, Nylander, Nyquist, Pettersson, Raymond, Mika Zibanejad. Like the list just keeps going on. And then you look at the defense. Rasmus Andersson there of Calgary. You've got Dahlin, who was able to score a goal in that last game. You've got such great players for Team Sweden. This is a team that really can pull together. And then looking at Team USA, who doesn't want to see Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel? Like there's so many stars on both of these teams.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'd be curious to see the reaction for Brad Marchand back in Boston in a Canadian uniform. Like, I think they'll cheer him for tomorrow afternoon's game, but if Canada reaches the final and they take on USA, that would be kind of weird. Them being the villain in Boston. Definitely weird. All right, they get live here in the Grid.
gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes, end of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. In-game live game day here on the grid. Scott and Joe, hour number one of our 4-hour extravaganza, as we like to call it, on a Sunday afternoon. Big comeback in college basketball. Wow. Northwestern was leading Nebraska. I don't know if it got to 20 or not, but pretty darn close, like 18. It is now tied at 54. 5.5, almost 6 minutes left to go in regulation. Northwestern getting a point and a half. Over under is 133.5, but that was like 40. You know what? Let me check the score, Joe, just to have it exactly. But it was, if it wasn't 20, it was pretty darn close to it. I know that. So big comeback by the Huskers this afternoon. It was 36-21 at halftime, so 15-point lead. And then I know Northwestern stretched it out to about 20 or so. So at 54 all. Did you have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I was looking at Northwestern plus the points coming into this game. So right now you can get them plus 1.5 at -122. And the momentum really is in their court right now, Scott. So glad to see it with Nebraska. I'm opposite. I was a Northwestern, but the momentum is with Nebraska here with what they've been able to do in the second half. So I'm not feeling comfortable with this Northwestern. You can get them plus a 1.5 if you think that Nebraska is going to drop down in this game. But I don't know. Nebraska has the momentum. I think they get it done. So I'm sitting on the wrong side of the bet, Scott. This total sitting at 133.5. I'm tempted to take it to the over because I do think we could see this one stay tight and go to overtime. Did you have any overtime bets going into today's games?
I didn't. I had the over, though, in this game. I didn't have, Nebraska or Northwestern. Northwestern 8-0 over. 8 straight home games have gone over. They're 19-6 over, one of the best over teams in college basketball. Nebraska is pretty even, but it's a little bit lower. What number did I get it at? I forget which number I got it at, but I know it was more than the 133.5. It was a low scoring first half, so we might need overtime for that. But I do like the over 133.5. I'd probably double down on that, especially since Nebraska is obviously coming to play. So, over on that one. I don't have the lines on St. John's, Joe, here because I'm here in New York. So, but I see the Red Storm 58-53 over Creighton now. 8.5 minutes left to go second half. What do you got on that one?
Yeah, what a game so far between these two. Really tight at the half, and we are seeing St. John's pulling away in the second. They've outscored Creighton 18-14 in the second half. Now, right now we got a spread of 7.5 plus 100 for St. John's, laying the 7.5 in total 150.5. I would take it to the over 150.5. Actually, it just dropped down as a basket was missed out there on the court to 148.5 at minus 128. And I do think it's a strong way to go. Both of these teams are going to play to the very last buzzer, and we're going to see those free throws coming in to account in this game. And both of these teams, all right at hitting those free throws. We have seen a couple miss so far in this game, but I do think we do go over the 148.5. I would take it up to 150.5 to the over. As for a side, Scott, Creighton's hanging around in this game. I like what they were able to do in the first half. I like what we're seeing out of them in the second half. They just have to hit a couple more baskets and keep it within that 8.5, and I do think they can. So Creighton plus the 8.5 at minus 130 and the over 148.5. And a big shout out to John Ryan, who did remind me it's crystal ball, not glass ball. Like I was trying to say out there, when you can see into the future.
Right, yeah. I honestly, I wasn't sure where you're. I mean, I was thinking like an hourglass, or automatically Back to the Future. With Michael J. Fox, and it's like the crystal ball. Yeah, right. Yeah. That happens to all of us. Every time you just get a brain fart, sometimes the words. I do that more so with players or coaches, right? It's like, I mean, I know the guy. He's the greatest coach of all time. I mean, I just can't put his name together. So yeah, I should have picked you up on that. My bad.
What happens when you have kids, Scott? Right? They suck our brains away. That is for sure, on stuff like that. Like common conversation, like just get it out, right?
Yeah. Kids and COVID, both. So,
yeah.
My SGP, we're doing okay here. We're with Utah State and New Mexico. Right now, it is tied at 20. Utah State just hit a bucket. So 28-26, Utah State leading. 4.5 minutes left to go first half. That's not bad. I got Utah State plus 4.5. I do have the over 159.5. It was off to a great start. It's kind of tailed off a little bit. Last number I saw, it's locked right now, but last number I saw was 151.5. Maybe they're reviewing a shot or something along those lines. So I need the offense to pick up there a little bit. And then all the others were all basically second half plays as far as total points and first to 80 points. But not bad. Utah State, kind of hanging around. I do, listen, New Mexico's pretty good and they're terrific at home. But as we were talking with Jeff, Joe, I've just noticed this year, like these big matchups, Florida against Auburn last week when Florida couldn't miss on the road. We're seeing a lot more road teams have success in the bigger matchups versus, when it's a ranked team versus an unranked team. That unranked team at home kind of rises to the occasion. But when you get monster games like this, like I said, like with Bradley, they were getting 5.5, 6. Creighton, St. John's would be another one. I bet you ultimately Creighton ends up covering that spread. They might not win outright, but it was big enough spread, 6 points or so, that I think they can keep it close. And the same thing with New Mexico or Utah State. I think they end up keeping it close.
Any chance you think they get the win here, Scott? Because I was interested in looking at them on the money line. I ended up not pulling the trigger at plus 4.5. I thought it was a decent price with the juice we had to lay plus the points. But this is a team that if they shoot better than they did in that first game versus New Mexico, that I think they have the ability to get the win. Now, I haven't looked at how they're doing from their threes, and that was what absolutely crushed them in that last game. They were only able to hit 16%. I think 5 of 31 attempts on those 3-pointers. But if they're able to continue, like we've seen so far in this first half, they have the opportunity of getting the win. Right now, that spread is plus 2.5 for Utah State. So a couple points less than what they opened at plus 4.5, but plus 120 on the money line. It was plus 160 going into this. Do you think they can win it?
I think they can. I was that close to putting them, on the money line, but I said, I don't want to get greedy with it. I think it's going to be a close game, but I did kind of almost do that by saying they're going to be the first ones to hit 80 points because that figures to be close towards the end of the game. So, yeah, like I said, I like looking for teams that lose at home and face that same team again later on in the season. So that's the case with Utah State and New Mexico.
slow play drumbeat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
There's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scover and when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are to learn we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
But if it ends up being 1 versus 2, which seems likely because the Cavs had a 5.5 game lead over Boston, the Celtics 3 games clear of the New York Knicks.
They're not unstoppable, not running away with everything, but for them to blow a 5.5 game lead on the backstretch in the NBA, already being a quality team outside of disastrous injuries, I don't buy that at this time.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's is offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night. But it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Hi, welcome back in Game Live, Game Day here on the grid. Scott and Joe closing out hour number 1, 3 to go, so don't go anywhere. We're looking at a little Utah State, New Mexico, Mountain West basketball, tied at 28 with 3 minutes left to go in the first half there. New Mexico leading 3.5, and then over-under is 150.5. I got that as part of my SGP, which sides more on Utah State side than it does New Mexico side. Need a little more points in that one. We got Northwestern and Nebraska, which you wouldn't think would be that big a deal, but Northwestern blew a big, nearly 20-point lead. They do lead by 1, 60-59. It's a big game for Nebraska. It's not a signature win by any stretch, but when you're going to be on the bubble as they are, Joe, you got to win games like this. It's really. It's a classic case where you have nothing to gain and everything to lose, right? If you win this game. Yeah. Against Northwestern, big deal. Northwestern's 500 in the Big Ten. They stink, blah, 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 right? They'll be 13-13 and 4-11 in Big Ten play. But if you lose it, it's just like, man, it just sticks out like a sore thumb on your resume. And Nebraska's 16-9, and we're getting to the point now where we know all those SEC teams are going to get in. We know the top 40 teams that are going to make it. It's the rest of the field, the remaining 24, 25 or whatever it is these days, 28 teams. And Nebraska is one of those. So you got to be able to win games like this on the road. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And Scott, I wanted to bring up something that you love to play. You love to play those overtime bets. Now, Nebraska and Northwestern, we aren't getting a line. There's 2 minutes and 53 seconds. I do think this one probably goes to OT, but we're not getting it. So 60-59. When we look at Creighton versus St. John's, this is a 2-point game right now with St. John's leading 59-57. We are seeing overtime in this one at plus 900. And then we're still earlier in that game between Utah State and New Mexico. So with that one tied up in the first half, 2 minutes left in this one, that's coming in at plus 1340. But I also think the other tight one is between here, Detroit Mercy and Oakland. Now that one's tied 70-73 or 73-73. Out of all of those games, which one do you think has a better chance of going to OT? I think between Creighton and St. John's, that one there I would play to the overtime. And then if you, on your book, because FanDuel's not offering it, Nebraska, Northwestern, I would take both of those if you can get them to go to overtime. What about you?
Yeah, I tell you, it's funny. You mentioned everyone, the one except the one I really would go with. I think I would go with Utah State, New Mexico. You know, it wasn't a close game by any stretch the first time they played. New Mexico won easily by nearly 20 points, but clearly Utah State is hanging around. It might end up being tied at halftime. When everything is said and done, it's a 2-point game with 2.5 minutes left to go. It's not a crazy high-scoring game like I kind of need on my SGP, but they're giving you almost 13-1. I think it was 1280. So I would go with that one. Now, I can't play the St. John's one, so that might be one I would do. You know, listen, they give you good enough odds, Joe, on all these that you play all three and you hope one wins. You know, whatever you're going to be, $10, $1, whatever you want to allocate for this bet, I would just divide it by 3 and play all three, 1/3, and then hope you win at least one of the two or one of the three.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, especially with how tight these games are right now. And I do think we've got a couple of those later games where you could look at as well, like Northern Iowa and Murray State. It's a 1.5 point spread. That game to go to overtime. We are getting the word that you hate, and now I'm never going to forget that. The value with this game to go to overtime. I'm never going to forget. You don't like the word. I know how you use it, though. But this one to go to overtime I saw earlier was plus 1,500. I'm not seeing it right now on the books. Oh, there it is. It's sitting at plus 1,400. So we have lost a little bit of that, but at plus 1,400, I still do think with how tight that game is expected to play out, that it could happen. And then, you know, I've got this weird feeling that Notre Dame's going to show up a little bit stronger versus Louisville. And that one, even though we've got a spread, we got a large spread. It's 7.5. I know the struggles Notre Dame has been having. I know how strong Louisville has been on defense, but I'm kind of leaning to that one might be a game where Notre Dame at home comes out stronger than expected. Again, this one I'm not seeing overtime in at the moment, Scott. I'm going to stay looking at this game to see if we can find that overtime popping up. But right now it's not there. So if you can get it, I'd take it.
Yeah, I don't see it either, Joe. They don't offer it on all the games for whatever reason. There we go. Yep, I do see it. It's all the way at the bottom here in New York. It's like from the 5th from the bottom. I got Notre Dame overtime plus 1,600. The no is minus 4,500. So I agree with you. I think Notre Dame plays a little bit better tonight. So I'd be okay with that.
Slow play drumbeat grows louder and louder every week to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scavern, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
At some point, these 80s are to learn, we don't need to hire ex-NBA guys. I need guys with college experience, who's gone out and recruited, who know how to develop talent. NBA guys with no college experience don't work in college basketball. I understand they run NBA-style offenses, but it doesn't mean they can run college programs.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
34. They are 14 games below 500. Any given night, you have no idea who is going to play for Philadelphia. Embiid has missed so many more games than he has actually played this year.
I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I will not bet on the Ravens because for the last 4 years now, I do it every year, and I want to hit myself in the head with a bat.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in Game Live, Game Day here on the Grid. Hour number 2 of our 4-hour extravaganza here on a Sunday afternoon. Scott Wetzel, Joe Madden until 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We got NBA All-Star festivities really being overshadowed with the NHL stuff and everything else that's going on, but still it is there. I actually hit 2 of our 3 props that we gave out yesterday, which we can get into a little bit here with our good buddy Tom Vecchio. You see and hear all the time here on the Grid. What's going on, Tom? How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing good. Of course, thanks for having me. Yeah, NBA All-Star Weekend is in full swing. Like you said, a little bit overshadowed last night with Canada versus USA, which was an awesome game. Seeing Mac McClung win for a third time. Good to see an upset with Tyler Hero winning the 3 points. Tonight's format, obviously very interesting with the 4 different teams. I'm ready to get to it.
Yeah, well, let's jump straight into it. Both of these games looking to hit right around the same time. Let's talk Team Shaq. What are you thinking for them? They're a 6.5-point favorite in their matchup. Low total, 73.5. Why are these totals, firstly, Tom, so low?
Yeah, so first off, the format is obviously super unique where the teams are playing to 40. So like there's a set point amount that the teams, whoever gets the 41st wins. So that's why the totals are so low. Obviously the teams are different with like Shaq has some older players. Chuck has the global players. Kenny has the younger players. Team Candace has the team that won the Rising Stars last night. So essentially my overall take is like, you have to tell yourself a story when it comes to betting these games or betting a future for MVP, whatever it might be. If you think these older players that Shaq has with LeBron, Steph Curry, Durant, Tatum, Harden, Lillard, if you think these players are like, oh, they're older players, they've been there, they've done this, are they going to be giving 100%? Well, if they're not going to be giving 100%, then the other team, they're probably going to be covering, and the game's probably going to be going over because if Shaq's OG team, which it's called, does end up winning, I think they cover. So the only way they don't cover is if we see these younger players, giving full effort because they want to make a statement, right? They want to have a big showing in their first All-Star game, whatever it might be. So you have to tell yourself a story of what we're going to be seeing in these games. And ultimately, I'm going to be on Chuck's team to win outright.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Because I was going to throw at you, FanDuel has Team Shaq, the team that I think is going to win, at Pick'em, -105 to win it all. And then there's this favorite little website that I'd like to check out, an off-seas book, that has Team Shaq at -165. Big difference. And they're pretty shrewd, that site, Tom. I bring it up here all the time, but they're always kind of ahead of the game. That's a big difference. That's a 70-point swing, -105 to -165. And you got the local boy, Steph Curry on Team Shaq. So why Team Chuck?
Really just comes down to, I think that they can win their first matchup, and the players on Team Chuck, I think, can go head-to-head. When we're looking at the full roster for Chuck, they added Donovan Mitchell because Giannis is not playing. Jokic, SGA, Wemby, Pascal Siakam, Karl-Anthony Towns. Just from a matchup perspective, they also added Trae Young as well. So from a matchup perspective, they have the size out there, and no one can really go head-to-head with Jokic and Wemby on the floor at the same time, add in Towns, add in the shooting we have from Donovan Mitchell or SGA. I think they can get it done. I understand why Steph Curry is the favorite to an MVP, obviously at his home court. His last time, not his last All-Star game, but his last All-Star game at his home court. Like, they're never going to be back there between now and the time that he retires. So I understand why Shaq's team is getting maybe some public money or maybe some sharp money, but I just like going with some better odds with Chuck's team.
Okay, so we are getting Team Chuck to win it all at +185. What are you thinking in that first matchup? Are you laying the 3.5 for them to cover against Team Kenny, or are you taking them on the money line and maybe parlaying it with something else out there?
So I think they cover, and I think the under would hit in that first game. I think those things are pretty correlated. Like, if it's going to be a close game, we're going to see it close to 80 total points, which, again, the teams have to play the first one to 40. So if it ends up, 40, 37 or 40-38, obviously they're not going to be covering and the over would be hitting. So I think they cover and the game stays under. The team for, Team Kenny, they just don't have the pieces that I would be looking to have put up a big performance, specifically from Team Chuck. I like Donovan Mitchell. I think he's going to be having a big game. Obviously got added that announced as a starter or should be announced as a starter for Team Chuck. That's where I want to be looking. I also have a very, very small play on Donovan Mitchell to win MVP at 24-1. And again, this comes down to like telling myself the story of like what I think is going to happen. If you think Team Shaq's going to win, whatever it might be, you could certainly take Steph Curry at 5-1, or you want to take a LeBron at 9-1, whatever it might be, because they're going to end up winning. Those main players are going to be doing their thing. The one player I wouldn't bet on would be Jokic, actually, at 32-1. He's a player that has varying degrees of effort at times, and I don't think we're going to be getting it in all-star format from him.
Yeah. It's weird as FanDuel, Tom, has, they normally have these bets. Will a player score, 15 points, 20 points, 25, 30, right? So because of the format, they have to score 4 points. And you're thinking, all right, boy, I can get, Steph Curry to score 4 points. What are you kidding me? Yeah, where do I sign for that? But in reality, you got to realize it's only to 40. So I will say this, FanDuel doesn't allow you to bet it, but don't bet Team Shaq minus 6.5 and over 73.5 because that's an impossibility. Because in order to cover to 6.5 points, they'd have to win by 7, and that would be 40-33, which would mean it's under 73.5. So you got to be careful with some of this stuff.
Right, and one thing I should have said from the jump is not only with that, the rules, the format, all these things. I would also say you should probably back down the unit size that you're betting on an all-star game or a skills competition for any sport, home run derby, whatever it is. There's just so much variance in these things that you don't want to be going into and saying, oh, why did I bet on something that these players don't have full motivation? You might as well come out and say, okay, I bet a smaller unit and I came up with a small loss or a small win and we can move on to tomorrow. So again, like you said, the 6.5 and the over 73.5, those things do not correlate at all. So that has to be kept in mind with the 40-point total.
And Tom, I want to ask you, what's your overall thoughts on the All-Star games versus what the NHL is doing this season with the Four Nations?
So it's a little weird that players are announced as East and West starters when they're not representing East and West, right? Like we are voting for like, oh, these are the Eastern Conference All-Stars, these are the Western Conference All-Stars, and then that doesn't carry over to the format of the tournament. I think they either need to do like East veterans, East Rising Stars, West veterans, West Rising Stars, or do something along the lines that the NHL is doing and do like a Team USA, same thing, veteran, Team USA Rising Stars, international veterans, international Rising Stars, and then have them face off, because that's where we will start to get more motivation and more effort from players. Historically, when we've seen these games, they end 180 to 170, like we're getting a mass amount of points because there's no defense. At least the players will have some inkling of motivation that will drive them saying, hey, we are representing, we are the Rising Stars International. We want to put that on display. There has to be some other level to get some extra effort out of these players.
Here's my fear, Tom, and I'm one of the few people I think that, you know what, I don't care. I was telling this to Joe. I don't care if it's 190 to 189. I really don't. I give it up the fight as far as these guys playing defense. So if they want to go out there and just do alley-oops and everything else, knock yourself out. But the one thing that we had was what? Everybody, and I mean everybody, bet the over in the NBA All-Star game. And now with this goofy format, you've taken away the one hook that we have, like it's an automatic winner. We don't have too many automatic winners in gambling, right? And now you've taken that away. So if the gambler's not interested, I don't think the casual fan's going to be any more interested in this than they would if it was just, 12 on 12 or 15 on 15. I mean, who's watching? My point is.
That's an interesting point. I would have to agree with that. Like historically, a lot of people would always bet unders on the first game of Christmas Day. Starts at noon, players come out a little bit slow, and then you just bet overs in the NBA All-Star game, whatever the total might be. We're going to be seeing all those points. So I'm on board with that. Like, you want to have people interested for different reasons, and whether it's people from a betting perspective, people getting a look at younger players on their team, rival teams, there has to be something else to draw people in. And this 4-team format, I don't think is the answer.
When you're looking at Team Chuck, is there any player other than Lillard you're really looking to stand out tonight?
It would be Mitchell or Wemby. As the international player leading that forward, he probably might be the answer. And at 8-1 is maybe the longest we'll ever get him in an All-Star game.
Yeah. Talk with Tom Vecchio, host here at the SportsGrid. So, quick little break. We'll come back and maybe get some baseball talk with them. That's next here in a break.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass on the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes, end of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Yes, welcome back. In-game live game day here on the grid on a spectacular Sunday afternoon. Nice and easy Sunday afternoon. We got the NBA All-Star game later on tonight. We got some college basketball this afternoon. And we got pitchers and catchers reporting this week and many more reporting next week. We got some moves being made. Red Sox signing Alex Bregman. As a Sox fan, happy about that. $40 million a year. I'm not exactly happy about that, but it's not my money. So I'll talk with Tom Vecchio, SportsGrid host here on the grid. So, Tom, your thoughts on Major League Baseball? I know in the break there, we were talking about how you made your first bet. I made my first bet as well this week in baseball, but apparently you made yours as well, right?
Yeah, I got a couple futures. That one plus two more. Let's start with the two because they're just opposites of each other. Basically the same outcome. National League exact result championship. Dodgers to beat the Mets at 10-1 and Mets to beat the Dodgers at 16-1. That is the expectation coming into the season. That's like the chalk outcome. Now, I've plays on both of them. So if either of these happen, I'll still come out net positive, obviously just because that's how the math works out. This is the expectation after the free agency signings, everything. The Dodgers not making the championship series, I don't think that's, so that's not something anyone's expecting. So them beating a team, I think this is where we get the most value. Instead of taking a Dodgers outright championship price, get them to beat an exact team. And whether I add something on later in the season to beat the Braves, the Phillies, or someone else, that's what I want to be going, exact outcome for Dodgers over the Mets or Mets over the Dodgers. Get both of those in there. Next up, which I spoke about last night on In-Game Live with Brady Cannon, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to lead the league in home runs at 45-1. He was telling me that this number was down at 27-1 at Circa out in Vegas. So 45-1 is a great price. So looking at Vladdy's underlying metrics from last year, they are really, really strong outside of his fly ball rate. His ISO was still over 200. His strikeouts weren't high. His barrel rate was at 13.7%, which was the highest it was since 2021. His hard contact rate is still over 40%, but his fly ball rate was at 33%, which is not good. when I'm looking at it, I would say he can fix that. And the lack of power in terms of results and home runs, I think he knows as a parent, and everyone else knows as a parent. Add in this contract motivation, lack of extension, whatever it might be, you can fix fly balls, right? You can tweak your mechanics to add fly balls. As long as he still has that power with a very strong barrel rate and a hard contact rate over 40%, he can fix the fly ball rate, which will lead to more home runs. So I love the price. Obviously, if it's lower elsewhere, combined with the contract motivation, whatever it might be, I absolutely love Vladdy this year.
Okay, I'm going to have faith that you're right on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. because I know as a Toronto Blue Jays fan, it's been hard because he's so strong out there, and just some of those fly balls absolutely have killed him in the last couple of seasons. But is there any pitchers that you've looked at as well for those strikeout props? Because it really draws my eye looking here at Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens to record 200 plus strikeouts in the regular season, though, is so highly juiced at minus 215. You'd have to take him up to 250 plus strikeouts in the regular season. That's where you're starting to get value, but we know how strong Paul Skeens was last season. That's plus 330. Do you think you can get that higher? Or is there another pitcher maybe that you might be looking at, Tom, if you've been looking at this market as of yet?
Yeah, so as I told Brady last night, like this is the beginning of my process when pitchers and catchers report. I think the Paul Skeens number is fine. I don't have a whole lot of interest in it. I basically won't have a whole lot of interest in Paul Skeens this season just because those lines are going to be heavily bet. I probably will have interest in Paul Skeens unders at a certain point. If we just see the line continuously go up and up and up, he's going to fall under at times. The one pitcher that I have begun to look at for two different awards would be Spencer Strider. And it would be Spencer Strider, and just the differential would be Spencer Strider to win NL Cy Young is 30-1, and Spencer Strider to win NL Comeback Player of the Year is plus 550. So if he's in a spot to be one of the favorites to win Comeback Player of the Year, he means he's probably having a great year on the mound, which means he's not going to stay at 30-1 to win Cy Young very long. Now, I'm not going to say he's going to win the Cy Young Award, but simply getting that price at 30-1 preseason, if he starts off really strong and stays healthy, that number is going to be sub 10-1 before the All-Star break. So there's a chance that he can win the Comeback Player of the Year and lose Cy Young or vice versa, whatever it might be. But getting at 30-1 when he's a favorite to win another award that's somewhat correlated is a spot that I really do like.
How about if you want to play a hunch, Tom? How about under Chris Sale's strikeouts 179? Yeah. People say you can never predict an injury. With Chris Sale, you can predict an injury. As a Red Sox fan, I will tell you, you can definitely. And the chances of this guy staying healthy back-to-back years and having the year he had last year as he gets a year older, approaching 30, he'll be 36 in March. So how about under? If you want to play a little hunch under 179 strikeouts, Chris Sale?
I really like a lot of unders on pitchers just in general. So what I would say about Chris Sale is no different than what I would say about any other pitcher. One pitcher, a pitcher missing, let's just say 2 weeks. Let's not even say it's a major injury. He misses 2 starts, maybe 3 starts. If he misses 2 starts, we're talking about 15 strikeouts if he's like a really strong strikeout pitcher. Right. 15 strikeouts is a lot to overcome if you're talking about a season-long prop. Like he would have to go out there and then put up 9, 10 plus the next 4 or 5 consecutive starts just to make up that differential. So unders on strikeouts can be very profitable just because, like you said, injuries are just so apparent for so many of these teams. And when we see Jacob deGrom, and what was he for NL Cy Young, or AL Cy Young, excuse me, he was sitting at, what is he, 11-1? He's 4th on the board. Are you kidding me? Don't bet that Jacob deGrom. First of all, he's coming off of all these injuries. Shouldn't the goal for him to be healthy once they get to September and October, not to be pushing him out there for an extensive amount of innings and pitches? Don't bet Jacob deGrom. So give me a lot of unders on pitchers.
Yeah, I can definitely see why you're going there with that. I'm excited, you guys, looking at these MLB futures because I feel like a little kid in a candy store. I've yet to go over a lot of these. I was just looking at the stolen bases out there. For L.A. De La Cruz, we know how strong he's at getting them. His number sitting at 53.5. It is a little high, especially when you weigh in that injury factor. But Tom, I want to know who wins it all. World Series, Dodgers just keep getting stronger and stronger out there. Plus 240. Are they taking it?
If they don't, it might be a little bit of a failure, but obviously we can't be betting that price. So again, it would turn to like Dodgers beating the Yankees again, Dodgers beating the Orioles, or you just have to pick the teams. That's where you can get the most value, even getting the same type of outcome essentially.
Yeah. Tom Vecchio, great job, man. I appreciate a couple minutes with you on the Sunday afternoon. I know you got better things to do, so I do appreciate a few minutes, and we'll do it again soon.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back with our Sports Millions Pick'em, guys.
Yep, sport.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in Game Live, Game Day here on the Grid. Thanks again, Tom Vecchio, for joining us, giving us a couple of winners, whether it's in the NBA All-Star Game tonight or some baseball stuff. And yeah, baseball right around the corner. How about that with pitchers and catchers reporting? Time on our clock for a little Sports Millions, little higher or lower. This is where we play the game. You pick a game and you play a team or a prop, a player, and whether he's going to go higher in rebounds, points, assists. Could be NBA, although not today. Could be hockey, although not today. So today we're going to use college basketball, Joe. And I'm going to look at one of the later games. I'm going to look at Rutgers and Oregon as far as my focus. I do like the game. I think we're going to get some points, right? Again, as we say all the time, if you go higher or low, I'm guessing 80% of the people go higher versus lower. And so it's just a natural thing, right? So I'm going to look for a game that's going to have a lot of points, and Rutgers and Oregon should have a lot of points. Oregon plays much better at home as they are tonight, so I'm expecting them to play a little bit better than Rutgers, although I think Rutgers is going to give them a game tonight. So Oregon 4-1 over at home last 5, so again, leads to more points. So where are we going to go? A couple of guys we could choose from. I'm considering Oregon's Nate Biddle. Who's he? He's the center who shoots threes, all right? So right away, whatever number we get, if this dude's out there at 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", shooting threes, we got a fighting chance to get this thing higher than his total, which is 12.5. Average is 12.5 points, so you're not getting any kind of good mark from that standpoint, but I will tell you, he's had 13 points or more in 7 of his last 12 games, including 3 of his last 5. Again, he's a center that shoots threes. Oregon 15-10 over, including 4 straight. So the team in general has been scoring a lot of points lately. So I'm considering Oregon's Nate Biddle higher than 12.5 points. What about you?
Okay, I like where you're going there. I'm actually surprised his point number isn't coming out a little higher. So I love the higher than 12.5. And when I look at my matchup here, it's going to be Louisville versus Notre Dame. I was talking with you on the break. I do think Notre Dame can keep it tighter with Louisville here. I think this is going to be a competitive matchup between these two. Actually, when I start breaking it down, I think Notre Dame is stronger at getting those 3-pointers as well as the 2-pointers on the board. And for them to be able to keep it tight, for them to be able to have a solid game where they can put the points up on the board, it has to run through their guard, Marcus Burton. Now, Marcus Burton coming out here has a number of 1.5 threes, and I do think he's going to be able to sink those threes in this game. He's been so strong as of late, especially 23 points on average over the last 4 games, in 4 of the last 5 games. And when we look at him as well, averaging 21.3 points on the season. And when we start breaking it down to how he has been doing at sinking those threes, now he hasn't hit them in the last 2, but the 5 prior, he was able to go higher than 1.5 made threes out there. And in 3 of those 5 games, he did hit 3 or more threes, once the 3, and then he was able to hit 4 in those others. He's getting those opportunities out there on the court. And I know Louisville, strong defense out there, Scott. This is a defense that's holding opponents to 67.3 points per game. But I do think Marcus Burton on his home court should be able to keep it tight in this one and be able to go over 1.5 threes. Look for that bounce back after the last 2 games, only being able to hit 1. And for Notre Dame to really come out here nice and strong. So Marcus Burton for me, higher than 1.5 threes for Notre Dame versus Louisville, Scott.
Yeah, I tell you what, Joe, I like that one a lot. Listen, Vegas has been built on, he's due. I get that, right? The bettor's famous, betting system. But in this case, he's not gone 3 straight games without having, at least 2 3-pointers. I'm looking at his log here. You're right. The last 2, only 1 apiece. But before that, 3, 2, 4, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2. I mean, it's 7 and 3 his last 10. And he's put monster numbers up on the board too, right? He's not, a 10-point scorer. He's their leading scorer by far. 32 points, 23, 25, 17, 26, 21, 28, 20, 23. I like that one. You know what? I almost wish I had that one. We're going to combine them because you need 2 for 1 play. So Marcus Burton, higher, 1.5 made threes for Notre Dame. And then I'm using Oregon Center Nate Biddle, higher, 12.5 points. And you put that in there, and hopefully we can cash, a nice little winner there on Sports Millions. So check it out. So good job, Joe. Appreciate that. Back to the board we go when we come back and get live. GameDay.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back in Game Live, Game Day on the Grid. Scott and Joe, hour number 2. Looking at some of the college basketball scores here, Joe. I see St. John's did win, and lo and behold, by 6 points, which is what the line was. You know, depending on where you do, you know, sometimes you get the 5.5, sometimes you get the 6.5. You know, in-game line, obviously, it's all over the place, but it did not go to overtime. St. John's wins 79-73. Well, I tell you what, the Red Storm, Rick Pitino, he's got his issues. Clearly, he's got his issues, right? But talking about turning around a program here in New York, boy, he's done that in just a couple of seasons. They're now 22-4. They're ranked 9th in the nation. They had a couple of nice wins. They beat Marquette. They beat Creighton. That was kind of the bugaboo heading into these last 2 weeks, Joe, here in New York. It's like, well, they really haven't beaten the better teams in the Big East. And if you looked at their schedule, they hadn't. But they have now. So they're actually a legit team. You're looking for a little flyer. Well, I tell you what, you could do a heck of a lot worse than Rick Pitino with a good basketball team. So St. John's wins by 6. Michigan beat Ohio State. Are you a big college basketball Ohio State fan like you are football, or no?
No, it doesn't roll over to the basketball team. So just the football team, Scott. Not that crazy of a Buckeye fan.
That's actually good because they lost today. So Nebraska won. Didn't go to overtime. 68-64. So it went way under the original number, which was 143.5. But boy, they were, like I said, they're down double digits. A big double, almost 20. I'll check the play-by-play. At least 18. I know I saw that. They outscored Northwestern 47-28 in the second half, and they win by 4. So resume, no big deal. Okay, you're 17-9, but it was just one of those where, it would have hurt a lot more than actual what you get out of a win. But you need to win games like that in order to get your 23, 24 wins, like you're probably going to need to have in order to get into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. That's crazy momentum they had in that second half, Scott. And it's like why we look at those halftime lines and why we look at these live lines to see which team is really playing with that momentum and is going to be able to run away with it. When we look at Maryland here, they're up by 1 point over Iowa. They're up 31-29. I know I played this one in my same game parlay, looking at Maryland to come out nice and strong. They were a double-digit favorite going into this, so I played their team total instead of laying those points. But it's almost getting at a point with Maryland that I would look to lay the points. It's a 7.5 right now as they're up 31-31. It's minus 125, laying the 7.5. I want to see a 6.5 or a 5.5 out there for Maryland, and I'll feel a lot more comfortable. Anything you would like live in this game?
Boy, I'd say the over, but man, that's a monster number now. 175.5. You got 62 points though, with 7 minutes left to go in the first half. So you're getting Iowa's A game here, right? Clearly, you're getting their A game. If you were a little concerned about the over to start, as I was, you were more concerned about Iowa being able to score some points on the road, but they're doing a good job. You got 162. You got 62 points, 7 minutes left. You probably should be able to get at least another 25 points, I would think, in the first half, the way they're going. So that would put it at, now it's 34-31. So you're 90 points. You'd still need a pretty good number in the second half, but just a hunch, just a goofy hunch, because I kicked myself for not playing the over to begin with. I'll put it in now, even though it's 176.5, but let's go over 176.5, Joe.
Yeah, I do think it's a really strong way to go over the 176.5. The books have it juiced at minus 120. I am getting that 5.5 now that I want for Maryland, as Iowa leads us 134-231. So I'm going to jump in laying the 5.5 at minus 122, but also the over 176.5, I definitely think is in play. You can parlay them both together. Let me just take Maryland's team total out of there. It's gone up to 91.5. It was 85.5. It's plus 232 if you take Maryland laying the 5.5 and the over 176. You guys, I'm going to throw that in, Scott. I really do think we're on the right side with that total, and I love Maryland to win this by 6 points.
Yeah, I would think they would come back. I'll get greedy. I played the over. I'd like to get Maryland to, or Iowa rather, get another bucket and maybe bring that money line down to like 2-1. Then I'll bet them on the money line, thinking I'm going to hedge with Iowa when Maryland makes the comeback like we all expect them to eventually do. So good start by Utah State here, second half. I tell you what, they led at the half against New Mexico. They're up 50-43. They're laying only 2.5. Minus 156 on the money line, so they're actually favorites, obviously, as being 4.5-point dogs. Over-under is creeping back up to the number we need, 155.5. It's kind of weird. This would be a good play if you like New Mexico, right? But I like Utah State, and I do think they got a halfway decent chance of winning. But if you wanted to play the game, New Mexico plus 122 money line right now might not be a bad play, thinking, okay, you get 13 minutes, almost 14 minutes left to go in the game. They're going to make a run somewhere along the line, Joe. I'm going to put that in there.
Yeah, and I think that's a great strategy to be playing that right now with New Mexico. I want to know how high we're going to go here between South Florida and UAB. I got in on the over at 157.5, and looking at that live number right now, Scott, UAB is leading this game 64-54 over South Florida. We're at 170.5. That total is so high, minus 120 to the over. But I don't know, Scott. I can't see this game slowing down out there on the court. We're into that second half of this game. Both of these teams in that first half just lit it up. We saw UAB put up 47 points. South Florida put up 37. So in the second half, South Florida now with 19 points. UAB with 17. It's a back and forth battle out there, and we are seeing those three-pointers sink. So at 170.5, I could see this one going over, Scott.
Yeah. You generally get, teams that are shooting well, well into the second half, all of a sudden the faucet doesn't turn off. I mean, it gets a little bit closer and you're a little more, difficult to shoot in a close game down the stretch. But, you could have a bad first half and then things turn around second half. But, it's more likely that to occur versus having a team shoot well for 3.5 quarters and then all of a sudden not be able to hit the broadside of the barn. So, decent little under trends for this game, but boy, we're not getting it. 11 minutes left. We're at 123 points. So are we going to get 48 points in the final 11 minutes? It's a game where, nice little point spread, 5 points. So you might get some cheap fouling in the end. So, yeah, I mean, listen, 172 points is a lot of points. But, Joe, I think I agree with you. I think this one just might, buck the trends and go over this afternoon.
Yeah, definitely hard to take it to the under with what we're seeing out of both of these teams. And UAB, at the end of the day, I just don't trust their three-point defense out there. And I think South Florida will sink a couple more of those three-pointers on the court. So out of all three of those games, Scott, it is Iowa versus Maryland that we are seeing that highest total at 175.5. But I do think we have the ability for at least two of the three to go over those live numbers right now. So South Florida and UAB at 171.5, Iowa and Maryland at 175.5. I like both of those to the over. Utah State, New Mexico, 151.5. It seems light, right? Minus 118 to the over in that as those numbers keep moving. I still think that seems light as well. I think we can see all three. It's a Sunday. These guys want to get those points on the board.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I always, you break it down into quarters, right? First 10 minutes, second 10 minutes, third, and then fourth 10 minutes. So you got 12.5 minutes left of the first, quarter of the second half. So we got 96 points. If we can get another 10, now you're at 106 points. Now you'd still need a 50-point fourth, final quarter as they bump that up to 154.5. So liked it a little bit more when it was 150.5, 151, but we're in a position where the so-called better team, New Mexico, is trailing, so that's always good to to have some points. So it's amazing that they're holding on to this lead, 50-46. Good job by Utah State. Hard to beat a team from start to finish, like we're going to ask Utah State to do. It sounds weird, but it'd almost be more comfortable if they were trailing early on. But they've been leading, so far, so good. All right, in-game live continues on a Sunday afternoon. Here in a minute.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back. In-game live game day here on the grid. Hour number 2. Scott and Joe checking out the college basketball scene. We got 3 games going on. Nothing really has changed much, so we'll put that aside for a second there, although we'll keep a keen eye on that. And let's talk a little hockey here, Joe. We got some second-half futures that the FanDuel and I'm sure the other sites all offer. A couple of things here that kind of jump off the page. I was looking at this stuff last night. How about the President's Trophy winning? Who's going to have the most points in the NHL? Whether you want that or not, supposedly there's a jinx there about how if you have the most points, you don't win. I actually did look that up last year, and the percentage outside of the NFL, the NFL, the team with the best record, does win a lot more than the other sports. But baseball, basketball, NBA, and hockey, they're all about the same. There really is no jinx, but believe as you will. So right now, Winnipeg has the most points, 81. They're giving you plus 170. They're the second choice behind Washington. They have 26 games left. Washington has a game at hand. They have 27. They're giving you plus 170, which is pretty good, right? But they only have 11 home games, 15 road games. They're playing great. I mean, they've played great on the road. They've won 8 straight. Who knows what we're going to get out of these teams after the All-Star break. Connor Hellebuck, their goaltender, is the goalie for Team USA. If they were to win, is he going to come back focused? Don't know. On their schedule, out of their 26 games, San Jose, Chicago, Anaheim, Buffalo, and Philadelphia twice. That's 6 games that they really should win. But then you got Washington. They have 110 points. or excuse me, they have 80 points. They're plus 110. They're the odds-on favorite. They have 27 games left, 14 at home, 13 on the road. Their schedule a little more difficult. They got a couple of cupcakes: Philadelphia, Chicago, Anaheim, and San Jose. But that's only 4 versus the 6 that Winnipeg has. Any thoughts on maybe you think maybe Edmonton? Maybe there's going to be a team that's 8, 9, 10 points out of it. I don't think so. But who do you think is going to end up with the most points in the NHL?
Well, that's where I was going to go. Look at the Edmonton Oilers. They're plus 900 to get the President's Trophy, and I would love to see it because I do believe in jinx, and I think that will totally jinx the Edmonton Oilers. But when we look at their points, right, the Winnipeg Jets sitting there with 81, like you said, the best. The Washington Capitals, I love what we're seeing out of this team. Ovechkin just playing at another level. We know the Jets have run out of steam before making that push into the playoffs. The Washington Capitals, this is a team where no one expected them to be sitting in this position right now going into coming out of this break with 80 points. But the Edmonton Oilers, a team everyone expected to do strong. We know that they made the Stanley Cup Finals last year, losing that one to the Florida Panthers. This team is so hungry. We're seeing that home ice advantage for the Edmonton Oilers, but we're also seeing them have success out there on the road. What we saw with Connor McDavid out there on the ice on Saturday is the level of play he wants to play at each and every single game. And there is no denying Connor McDavid, even though I'm a Calgary fan, he's on the Edmonton Oilers. It's hard to cheer for him, but he is playing elite hockey. He's trying to push this team to success. So when we look at them sitting here with 72 points in 55 games played, they're a game behind the Winnipeg Jets, sitting right the same as the Washington Capitals. I do think the value, Scott, is there on the Edmonton Oilers at plus 900 to take the President's Trophy, and I believe in jinx. So I want to see it happen even more so now that I'm looking at the value and the jinx factor for the Edmonton Oilers.
All right. Let me look at their schedule. So they played 55 games, so they have 27, so that would be one more than Winnipeg. They played 30 at home, and then 25 on the road, 25, 26 on the road. So they got a few more road games left than they do home games. Let's see how many times they play like San Jose and Seattle and Chicago, which would kind of help their cause. I will say this also, if, big if, but if they were to lose in this Four Nations thing, I would have more confidence in Edmonton and McDavid, just kind of use that as a source of motivation than I would like Winnipeg. Like I am a little concerned about Hellebuck. First couple of games back. I mean, all these guys, Joe, we touched on it a little bit yesterday. I mean, they're playing their championship on Thursday, and then they're back on the NHL ice on Saturday. Win, lose, or draw, so much emphasis is being put on this that you can't help but think that there's going to be just a natural letdown for whether you won or lost the game, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we look at the Four Nations competition, there is only 2 teams not represented, and that is the Washington Capitals and one other team. I'm just drawing a blank. I've got to find it here in my notes because I do have notes on who the other team was. It's not the Ducks. Is it San Jose Sharks? I believe no one from the San Jose Sharks and then no one from the Washington Capitals, right? How do we not have Ovechkin out there on the ice, right? The only 2 teams not represented.
Yeah. A lot of Russians on the Capitals. That would explain that. And San Jose stinks. So that would explain that. What San Jose Shark, I guess, really should be, right? So Edmonton, I looked at Edmonton's schedule, right? So it's a tough schedule. I will say they got Anaheim. They got Buffalo, but on the road. You play these road games, you never know. Seattle, but on the road. They got San Jose. They got Anaheim again. And they got San Jose 2 more times. They got San Jose 3 times. All right, so they got 5 games against Anaheim and San Jose, if I'm counting this right. 1, 2, 3 times. So that's certainly, it really is easy down the stretch. That's for sure. They got a lot of ground to make up.
Yeah, turnaround for the Carolina Hurricanes. We know they added Mikko Rantanen to this lineup. They're plus 2,600 right now. The Carolina Hurricanes sitting here with 56 games played, so 1 more than the Washington Capitals, the same as the Winnipeg Jets. They're sitting here with 70 points, so they do have a lot of ground to make up as well. But I think this team got even stronger. And correct me if I'm wrong, the last time I checked, they were the odd favorite to win the cup. So if we're looking at a team that's the odd no, Edmonton's moved into that favorite spot at plus 650, plus 700, second favorite here for the Carolina Hurricanes. This team is stacked though, Scott. I think they have every ability to make a push.
Yeah. It's the team. I kind of like Washington. I think they're going to be all rested. There's no letdown. There's no anything. And if anything else, Joe, they're all going to be ticked off that they weren't invited to this thing. I think they're going to come out flying. I would think Washington. That's why they're plus 110 only. So, Ovechkin versus Gretzky next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes, end of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in Game Live, Game Day here on the grid. Scott and Joe wrapping up hour number 2, talking a little pucks, a little second half NHL action. Let me just take a peek at the scores here real quickly with college basketball. Utah State now trailing New Mexico 59-56 as they play about 8 minutes or so left to go in the second half. 4.5 Utah State is getting the original number. 152.5 is your over-under. Iowa leading Maryland still 51-47. It's up to 183.5. So if you did play that 175 or so that we talked about, you're looking pretty good. You can hedge. This is at halftime. They got 98 points at halftime. Holy crow. Then UAB leads South Florida 70-65. 6 minutes left to go there. That's come down a little bit. That's down to 164.5. And South Florida is getting 7.5 points on that one. So, Joe, we were taking a look at the NHL, second half of the season, and one of the props that they offer us is, will Alex Ovechkin set the all-time scoring mark? Will he score goal number 895, not tie, but break the record this regular season? He needs 16 goals in 27 games. That's a monster number. It really is. To me, they're not giving you really what it's worth. The yes is only plus 190. The no is minus 260. That's a lot of goals. He may get focused, one hat trick, and all of a sudden it's down to 13 and 26, which seems more reasonable. But I'm kind of leaning towards the no. I wouldn't lay minus 260, but for plus 190, that should be like 4-1, 5-1. That's a lot of goals in 27 games.
Scott, I'm disappointed. He's going to get those goals in like 20 games out here. Come on, let's look at the schedule. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. He's going to get there. I'm like looking here. I'm going to start counting the goals and where I think he's going to be able to hit them, because when we start breaking it down, you can look at him to score goal number 895 and which team it's against. So at plus 850, that's versus the Columbus Blue Jackets, plus 1100 versus the Isles, plus 1,600 versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. So the list just keeps going on and on. But let's look at that schedule, because I think he comes out of the break hotter than ever. We know Ovi had that injury, and he just came steamrolling back. His first matchup is versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's a day game next Saturday. He's going to hit the Penguins. We know that defense has the struggles. Give me 2 goals there. Okay, so we got 2 goals out of the 16 we need. Versus the Oilers, they're going to be at home. Can we see him hit the Oilers once? I think we can see 1 out of them, right? Actually, let's be leery of the Oilers. Let's look at the Calgary Flames, because I think he's going to come off that big game, second night of a back-to-back. Versus Calgary, I can see him scoring. Calgary's on the road. We know the struggles Calgary's had this season on the road. So that's 3 goals already in the first 3 games. St. Louis, he can score. The Tampa Bay Lightning, those tend to be higher scoring games. So that is, what are we seeing? 5 goals in the first 5 games. The Senators, no. The Rangers, that's going to be hard. The Red Wings, I can see a goal. So that is 6 goals. We keep going. The Kraken, give me 2 goals versus the Kraken. So I'm already up to 8 goals, Scott, in the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games back. He's going to score it in 20. And then they got the Ducks, March 11 versus the Ducks. They're setting him up for all those empty netters. They're making him hit them. Right?
That's the key, Joe. If he can get to 10, then 100% right. Then they'll be setting him up for all the empty netters. Which is not easy to get an empty netter, but I could see, and I tell you, they don't offer it here in New York. I don't see it anyway. I see that bet, but I don't see which team he'll do it against. If you look at their schedule, as you were, doing there, they finish up with at the Islanders and at Pittsburgh. And if you just want to play a little hunch, right? It's too bad they're not at home, but they're not. But if you wanted to play a little hunch, the natural rivalry that we've seen with him and Sidney Crosby, wouldn't it be just fitting that, he would do it against Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins? What are they offering you for that one?
Let me just see. That just gave me chills, Scott. That's exactly how it's going to play out. You got to look at that storyline. Plus 1,600 to get it versus the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I do think that's a strong bet. You look at Columbus, they'll play them a couple times in that last week there of that schedule as well at plus 850, and the Isles a couple times as well, right? Yeah, the Penguins is the very last game. The Isles second last game on the 15th, and then 2 versus the Columbus Blue Jackets in the 2 games prior. So a couple back-to-backs there versus Columbus. It's going to be great, Scott. He has to hit it. If you think April 6th, the Islanders still think that's a good bet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Joe. Forget the plus 190 on the yes. I mean, if he's going to do it, it's going to be in the last couple of days, right? I would play against the Islanders.